Hello, all you lovely freedom people out there, and welcome to today's Fireside Freedom Chat. I'm your host, Bradley Freedom. Today, we've got Garret Kramer. That's right, we got Garret Kramer on the show. Such an inspiring conversation. It was an absolute honor to speak for as long as I was able to with Garret. It's a little over an hour, so we got a little bit longer Fireside Freedom Chat. I'm almost an hour and a half, I think, actually. But it's packed full of love, compassion, and talks of freedom. Really hope you enjoy it just as much as I did. Before we get into it, I want you to grab your phone and text in to 844-992-3733 the keyword Kramer1, and that's Kramer and the number 1. You're going to text that into 844-992-3733. We're going to send you out today's show notes. You don't want to miss this one. Come on, let's go. Hopefully more and more of us can connect. And that's really what this is about. It's about connecting as many freedom people as we can, or people that just share this core value of freedom, and some level of self-responsibility, right? And I truly believe with self-responsibility comes freedom. And the more self-responsible you are, the more freedom you want.
Well, we can get into this if you'd like.
Yeah,
are we recording now? Or you want
we're recording. Yeah, go. Yeah, whenever.
Okay. Well, buddy, I actually think I think it could be the other way. In other words, I think that self-responsibility is a concept, but I don't think it's a truth, whereas freedom is who we are. It's our very nature. Freedom is, in my mind, another word for the self, capital S, or source, or awareness, or consciousness, or you might even say God, presence. I think freedom, capital F, is a fair word to use when we talk about who we truly are. Now, where responsibility is a concept, but frankly, I think we have to be careful that we don't mix this concept in with freedom, because a concept can never be true. Like, a concept is just a concept, right? So germ theory is a concept.
Sure.
It's a theory. Whatever. Right. Terrain theory is a theory.
Right.
When we start to say which one is true is when we're going to start to just bash each other in the head. Not you and me, but yes. This is what goes on. They're both theoretical. Now, we can surely look at the data and say, well, it looks to me like we live our lives based on germ theory. Medicine is based on germ theory being true. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem. Like, we're the whole pharmaceutical industry is based on something that they can't prove to be true. Mm-hmm. Now, you want to say, okay, maybe someday they could prove it to be true.
Sure.
But sure as shit have not done that yet. Right. So we have to be realistic about this and say, they're probably never going to, like, if they haven't done it yet, like, I've never seen a pink gorilla.
Right.
But I'm going to leave myself open to I may see a pink gorilla someday. But probably I'm 59 years old. The odds are that I've never even seen one on TV. It's probably not going to happen. But I'm going to just leave myself open to the possibility that maybe it's going to happen, but probably not. Okay. So contagion theory even the theory or concept of personal responsibility, and we can get into why that's a concept and not a truth if you'd like, but it's simply not. And actually, I think that speaking as personal responsibility, I've been around the consulting, counseling, coaching world. That's my career, my whole life. I was an athlete, a player before that, and a hockey prep school hockey coach before that, high school hockey coach.
Okay.
And I can tell you that no performer, just limiting it to performers for a second, athlete, thrives when more burden or responsibility is placed on his or her shoulders. No. They thrive in the truth, freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if we start, and this is my opinion, and it's a contrary opinion to many who are on the so-called same side as me, and I'm not saying I'm right here.
Sure.
I don't care what anybody says. Like, anyone who's standing up for freedom is cool with me. Like, I'm fine with it.
Right.
And we don't have to agree on the words or exactly how we teach it. No, definitely not. And actually, 100%. We shouldn't.
We shouldn't, yeah, because then that means you're a free thinker.
Right, exactly. And I don't want my wife or my children to agree with it. If it's a problem.
Right. Yeah, if everybody's just to get along kind of thing, right? And that's part of the problem right now.
Actually, my wife said to me, I trust what you're saying. And I said, wait a second, babe. I don't want you to trust what I'm saying.
No.
And we're talking about the virus or something about it.
Yeah, I want you to research it. Yeah.
You go. You trust yourself and go in. Don't trust what I'm. Not even my best friend. I don't even want her to do that. I want her to get in there.
Yeah.
And go for it. And then you tell me. You make up your own mind. And that's very important. So anyway, one of the issues with personal responsibility is. And I write about this. I've written about this extensively, and I write about this in this book that if I could ever get, the reason it's been held up is because I held it up because something had to give during this busy time. Like I just couldn't. I'm like, I have it right here on my screen. I just give you a little, we're in final edits. I'm almost there. I'm on page 276 of 285. So I'm right there. But then it's got to get one more proofread and all that before it goes in. But anyway, so I talk about in this very book, actually, that until we eradicate the materialistic lie, and what I mean by that is, what I mean by materialistic lie or the paradigm of materialism that we live in. What I mean by that is not like materialism, like I want possessions. That actually springs from what I'm going to say, but more like materialism as in duality, as in separation, as in this idea that there is me here and you outside of me, separate from me. Okay. And that, and again, that belief, which can't be proven, because how would I know you without me?
Right.
You can't exist separate from me.
Right.
I wouldn't. I have no evidence of you without me. Of
Right.
course.
Right.
It's a supposition to say that once we get done with this podcast, that you're gonna be where you are and I'm gonna be where I am. Now, it's a reasonable supposition or concept, but you still. Right. Even the thought of you where you are can't exist separate from me.
Right.
So there's no separation. No one's ever experienced this separate subject and object. Right. No one.
Right.
But we live in this notion that there is me, this little speck in the universe, and there is all this other stuff, a million other specks, including 7.8 billion people.
Sure.
And we live under this paradigm that isn't even true. It's not even true. And under that paradigm that I am a separate being and you are a separate being in truth, we will always find conflict. Because ultimately, I'll be out for me and you'll be out for you because we're separate beings, fending for ourselves, personal responsibility and personal survival, Darwinism, all this nonsense, right? So those, in my experience in teaching this for so many years, Brad, like I can see your face and your reaction to what I'm saying. You never have heard it this way, maybe, but there's something that's in you that's saying, wow, this is right. Like I kind of get that.
Yeah.
And those of us, and it was same with me before I was turned in this direction, like like I always had a sense of it, but I didn't know what I was sensing, like I didn't know it.
Yeah.
And that's why young people generally relate to this message, because young people are closer to that truth, just sourced to God, quite frankly, than most people who are my age, like 59 and older or something. Because like, we've been so indoctrinated to be separate little peons in this world that we can't see through it. So when something like this virus cropped up, and this is a story that you may have heard me tell before, but it's worth hearing again, I think, is
yes, please.
I'm home, and at this time, I think, all of my kids who are at the time 28, 26, and 22 or 23, because of their life situations with this pandemic, in air quotes here, they were home. They came home. They just came home, and because I couldn't work. One's a college baseball coach.
Gotcha.
My other son's in med school, actually. My daughter works in Miami, and they just came home. And I was downstairs, I think, in the gym, and CNN was on, or some news program was on. I still watched CNN a year ago, 14 months ago. A lot's changed. So, and they were talking about lockdowns and you got to isolate. And I literally turned the TV off. I went upstairs and I said to my family, something's not right here. Something's not right. And they asked me to explain. I said, well, quite frankly, I've got to learn more. But what I'm sensing right now is that this is a lie, because how are we going to separate from each other? Where are we going to go? Like, I can't separate from myself. Like, where are we going to go? How is this even possible? There's just no way that a suggestion of distance, social distance, can be a reasonable suggestion, because even the sound of the car that appears to be coming from a road 100 yards from here, I'm looking out my office window here, that sound appears in me. It doesn't actually appear out there.
Right.
It's in here. Court,
absolutely, yeah.
The sight of that car happens here.
Yeah.
In me. So the idea of distancing, what you can't distance yourself from yourself. Where are you going to go? So this was a fatal error that those who have bought into the materialistic paradigm, hook, line, and sinker,
right?
And think of the so-called talking heads on TV, whether the mainstream media or the government, have fallen for, and they don't understand that. So they're suggesting measures or techniques that are literally wheel spinning. And it's proven, because nothing worked. Of course not. Of course it's not wheel spinning.
Yeah.
Because nothing takes place outside or separate from you. Even a virus. Yeah. It can't happen.
Yeah.
It literally is impossible. It's like saying a whirlpool in the sea is going to jump outside of the sea.
Right.
The whirlpool arises in the sea, and it's made of the sea.
Right.
It's not going.
It can't exist without it. Right.
It can't infect the sea.
Right.
It is the sea.
Yeah. Right.
So when you hear people say, "Well, viruses are in us; we're made of viruses." Now, the Jack Bushes of the world, the Andrew
human virome, absolutely, yeah,
Tom Callens of the world, they started to say this, and I'm like, whoa! Now they're speaking truth. They're speaking from a consciousness only model standpoint. And if you listen to Zach, he talks purely of consciousness.
I love that guy. Yeah. I mean, he brings you to tears, man. Just listen to him. He's just powerful.
Absolutely. And it's funny because my son Jackson, who's in med schools, I said, hey, listen to this guy.
Yeah.
And he watched one of his early podcasts during the situation, and he messaged me. I remember the text like, this is what a doctor should be.
Yeah.
And he has since reached out to Zach and wants to intern for him next summer. I'm like, man, we're rolling here.
Yes.
Something going here. So, I mean, Jackson always wanted to be a surgeon. He was a college ball player. He wants to be a surgeon. In his mind, he wants to be a surgeon. Mm-hmm. But we'll see where it takes him. So, when I started again hear Zach and Tom and even Tom Barnett from Australia talking, I was like, and Andrew Kaufman.
Yeah.
I started something is going, like these guys are on it. There's something here.
Yeah.
And it really marries very well with all things share my being.
Mm-hmm.
All things are made of my being.
Yeah.
All things are known by my being. And as opposed to a model of separation, this virus, we're at war with this virus. It's the enemy. This is ignorance masked as wisdom.
Sure.
Masked as courage, quite frankly. It's absolute ignorance. And I am not blaming people for having that standpoint. That standpoint is programmed into us from the time we're born.
Absolutely.
It just is. I mean, I'm not excusing it, by the way.
Right.
I'm not excusing that.
You're explaining it. You're not excusing it. You're just explaining why and how. But yeah, no excuse. Absolutely.
I'm not excusing myself when I fall for the lie, because I do too. I do. Sure. I absolutely do. I'm going to be honest. I fall for it too. But we need to look at that and say, we're just missing it. We're just missing it. And we always know when we're missing it, because when insecurity arises, it's simply our sign we're missing it. It's not complicated.
Right.
I mean, it just means to I've overlooked my infinite and eternal self. Okay, fine. I don't need to fix the insecurity. I don't need to get a shot or use a deep breathing technique or go have a drink or something. Thank you. That insecurity is simply my reminder, like I've overlooked the essence of self. I've taken you, Brad, to be a person who exists outside of me, when in fact, I am the sea and you're made of me.
Right.
We are one. We share a being.
Yeah. Amen, man. Yeah.
That applies to people. That applies to viruses. That applies to anything. Animals. That applies to nature.
Yeah.
And we totally have missed the boat on this. And that is what I knew that, that's why I knew something was off about this.
Yeah.
It just didn't add up. And in this book I've mentioned, which by the way, I'm not here plugging because I'm going to.
No, please do. I wanted to ask you about it. You're kind of actually just answering all the questions we have as you talk. So it's perfect. Just keep going, please.
Yeah. I'm not here to plug a book. In fact, as I say in the very beginning of this thing, I'm really writing this as a legacy. It's definitely my last book, and I'm writing it as a legacy. And I actually plan to set up my own distribution of this book, and I'm going to give away the book more than I sell the book, if I sell it at all. I don't want to make money on this book. I'm not. It's not the point of it, like literally. But the book's not about the pandemic or anything. Although it's amazing, when my wife was reading through the manuscript, she was like, "Wow, like you're predicting some of this stuff." Because I clearly say, towards the end, there's hints of it, but I clearly say that unless we write this materialistic lie, the world's going to explode.
Sure.
I mean, it's going to. We're still going to be okay. Like consciousness can't be destroyed. Who we are, the true self, isn't going to go anywhere.
Right.
There's no way that materialism, this belief or idea that you exist separate from me, which isn't true, can stand. A lie cannot stand.
So that's what I've come to understand as original sin. What original sin means is the belief in separation Because from that, then there's that, right? I mean, that's your foundation. And like you were saying that, and it's like the foundation of medicine or current allopathic medicine is based on a lie, or again, an assumption that just might not be true.
Well, the assumption, like you're sensing, like assumptions or concepts, as we said before, theories, ideas. This is all necessary and fine. Just using words here, sure, buddy. When we turn the theory or the concept into a belief, we then say it's true. Like,
right. You collapse the wave, right? Now you're collapsing the wave function and you're saying, right? And the quantum talk, then you're saying, now this is truth. And so it is, right? And so you just kind of pinned yourself into that corner of belief.
Exactly. Now you're living a life based on belief. And to believe is to not know. And that's why I suggest to everyone, don't believe what I say. Like, literally, don't believe what anyone says, including me.
Absolutely.
What we would then say, as you said earlier, like, explore for yourself. As I said to Liz, my wife, you got to look at this for yourself. But what we're really saying in the suggestion to explore for yourself, like, sure, because we're so programmed to be separate people, we take that to mean, oh, I got to dig into this and find out what's true and look at, but once we do that, what happens is we start to, without even knowing it, like even researching something like viruses, okay? So basic right now, and it's easy to talk about because it's so,
prevalent.
Fresh in our
yeah, it's right here, yeah.
So what happens when we start to really look at it, explore for ourselves, we're not really learning stuff. What we're actually doing is stripping stuff away. So we're stripping away the conditioning of our culture around viruses in this case. So we're stripping away all this belief that we have absorbed from culture mistakenly. And that all that belief has shrouded the truth and has shrouded or veiled our ability to see for ourselves. So what we're actually doing, and this is why Zach Bush and Tom and Andrew are so essential right now, is they don't really give you more. If you really look at it, they're stripping all the nonsense away, getting back to the core of it. Getting back to the core of it. And that's a brilliant teacher. That's a brilliant counselor. It's a brilliant parent, coach, friend, lover,
guru, whatever. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Back to source. We're getting back to who we are. So what happens is we say explore for yourself. People take that from a personal perspective. Okay, cool. But eventually, as belief starts to get broken down, as belief starts to dissolve, we get closer and closer to source. Closer and closer to peace, closer and closer to love. And now the idea of separation is laughable.
Yeah. Well, you keep peeling the onion, right? We're peeling that onion. And that's what I made the analogy of peeling the onion layer by layer.
And that's why I always say explore for yourself. Like I must write that on a post like once a month. And it's so funny because even though you write that, people say, oh, why are we supposed to believe you? I said, how many times do I have to say, do I have to put this on the bottom of every single?
Yeah, you do. In big, bold letters every time. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. A lot of people, and that's the thing I've said, and I've always said, I can't say always, but I started a practice of transcendental meditation probably about 15 years ago. But what it was is know thyself. Know thyself. Once you know thyself, it's the same self. You realize it's the same self. And then we all get to that same truth, which is the absolute truth that we're talking about, right? And then you can't be fooled from there. From that point, you can't be led around, right? Because but not just that, it's you don't want anybody else's opinion. I mean, you do because you enjoy listening to other people's opinion, but you don't want it to form your own. Does that make sense? Like you don't need the confirmation from someone else, right? It's yours. And it's a beautiful place to be.
Yeah. Before I answer that, though, check this out because you just said it. So there's a quote in between the author's note and the introduction of the table of introduction to this new book, and it is, your own self-realization is the greatest service you can render the world. Knowing thyself. So that's just what you just said.
Amen, man. Yes.
Ramana Maharshi said that.
Yeah.
And that's how the book opens, with that quote, which is what you just said, which is amazing in itself. That's just how life.
Well, this is what drew me to you, was what you say is so much. And again, and this is where we're being led to the same people. I didn't know who Zach Bush was before 2020. I didn't know Andrew Kaufman, but I mean, I listen to these guys and I resonate with what they say, just like you. I resonate with what you say. And I came to where I'm at because I came to where I'm at through self-exploration, 100%. I was raised without a father. I never had any sort of influence anywhere, right? And I've taught myself everything my entire life. That's the kind of power that I really want to help to instill in other people. I want other people to be strong. And that, because I think that that's where we are right now, is that, again, the antithesis of what you're talking about and what your book's about.
Well, I think that it's just wonderful to hear you say that. And I think that what, as I look within myself and see people, and I think that if anything, what I've taken a lot of criticism, not only when you talk about there is no actual separation, there is no actual individual in truth. There's no separation. There can't be an actual individual. That's all conceptual. Mm-hmm. That very sharing that is not going to make you Tony. I'm not going to make me Tony Robbins. I'm never going to be that figure.
That personality, right? It's the persona. It's the persona that's kind of
because because a consciousness only model, which is how I would describe it, is subject to so much backlash because you're actually calling out the ego for what it is.
Sure. Yeah.
You don't exist.
And it doesn't like that.
Right. So the ego, right. So this illusion called ego, like the mirage in the sea wants to be a real thing. It wants to be water. So once you call it out, it's gonna kick back at you. And I've learned to be very comfortable with that. Like I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, it's been going on my entire life because I've always had some sense of this. And it was, even though I was a good athlete and I suppose I was somewhat popular because I was a good athlete and I guess a decent leader on the ice when I was playing hockey. But I was also good. So it's not,
Sure.
whatever.
Yeah.
I come from a long line of good athletes and my kids are all good. It's just fine. It's one part of our life, part of my life and our family's life.
Yeah.
But, in pointing out the materialistic lie, my whole life, so to speak, I've been, as we said, the ego will kind of come at you for that. It's just not going to be an easy. It's not going to be an easy road, and there's reasons for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
In other words, in my mind, just saying it like this, just as a concession, you're not called to call out the materialistic lie just because you are. Like, you really got to handle it. Like, you're going to be put through a test. Like, do you really have the chops to hang in there with this? Because this is no joke here. Because this is it. We could talk about contagion theory, terrain theory, all this stuff all you want, but materialism is the source of all the other lies.
Yeah.
So materialism is the source of all isms. So it's the one ism that once it goes, the hell house of cards is coming down.
Yeah.
Including what's happening in the world right now. Think about it. I mean, it's crashing. So if you're called to come after that, you're going to be tested. I talk to my children about this all the time. My son's as I said, my oldest son's a college baseball coach, and they could have a tough loss or something. And I'm like, hey, you hang in there. You just got to walk through this fire. You keep going. You didn't choose a profession where you're not going to be subject to criticism from press, from parents, from college, from fans. I mean,
all of it.
Let's see what you got here.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we are called to point people back to source, ultimately, back to source. And what I've noticed is that, or how I would describe is like, why are you getting involved, Garret? Why are you a somewhat spiritual teacher, non-duality, conscious-only model teacher, counselor, speaker, writer, getting mixed up in this COVID nonsense? Because I'm also on the island about that. There's not many teachers like me who have jumped into this fire, so to speak. Like people that they're pretty now, and I'm not saying it's wrong to not speak of it. Like if you don't want to, that's fine. But so I've been asked why. Like, why are you doing that? Like you point out the materialism is a law. Like the world is just, it's all the sea. Like why would you even address this? And my answer to that is a few answers. But first of all, I'm here to support all these people that think that they're going crazy. Like they literally think they know something's not right about this. They can't quite always put their finger on it. And they're told that they're bad for not agreeing, that they're wrong, that whatever.
They're being gaslit like crazy. Like people know something's wrong, but then they just keep telling that their intuition and their is wrong. And so they're wrong at the core of who they are. And that's part of, I think, the agenda here is to stifle out God, to stifle out the life, to stifle out that source energy that you would then understand who you are. There's something definitely, because everything that's being done, I think, is pointing to that, And again, I'm not trying to get all conspiracy theorists or anything, but if you're talking about a holy war, if we're talking about a holy war, I mean, again, this is light and dark, whatever you want to say, but that's how I kind of feel is.
It's the ego's game. Like you just described the ego's game perfectly.
The death of the ego,
Ego's game. The ego's game is to convince you that you are a separate, limited, and lacking individual, and you need me.
So therefore, are we witnessing the death of the ego, right? Are we witnessing a third dimension the third dimensional reality manifestation of the death of ego? Well,
it's a weird thing to say. I know what you're saying, but it's a weird thing to say that's a way to conceptualize it, as we've said, because the ego is never alive. So we can never experience the death of ego.
Sure.
We could, what we're experiencing perhaps is simply recognizing the ego for what it is. Simply the belief, or if you want to say the idea, that you and I are separate individuals. The ego is the offshoot of the belief that I am a separate self. So the ego is the product of that.
So what we're doing is just raising awareness to what is to truth.
Well, you can't really raise awareness. What we're doing is we're stripping away the veil on awareness.
Got you. Yep.
Awareness and awareness, consciousness. I use those words interchangeably.
Sure.
God is another one. Sure. God's infinite being would be other words. But in essence, the way I would describe it is awareness or consciousness does not have levels. It is the only thing that is not an object. It is the only thing that doesn't have objective qualities. So awareness just is. However, awareness to know a world we'd say it like this, purposely veil itself to know itself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But the ego then creeps in and says, oh, no. This veiling is actually truth. So you are Clark Kent. You're never Superman. You're really Clark Kent.
Yeah.
Where there's no such person as Clark Kent.
Right.
Clark Kent is a veil, a costume.
Fictitious. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Clark
do you know who Muji is? Do you know who Muji is? Sorry to cut you off, but do you know who he is? Yeah. So, one of my favorite gurus. I love Muji, but again, he says it, I think, just so basic and easy, right? It's just the observer observing the observer kind of thing, and that is like source truth consciousness is that, and it's always there, and it's never changing. It's always the same.
We are that observer, and we like a dreamer. All of this is playing out within us right now. Now, very interesting, going back to the idea of responsibility, that we see that those characters in the dream don't control the dream. But even more important, the dreamer doesn't control the dream. So this entire experience, life, movie, game, whatever you want to say, is playing out within us right now. But we are not like the puppet master of this game. There is no puppet master. And this is vital to understand. And as we're both experiencing, as we look at it, it's like very freeing to know that. Yes. Wait. Now, as I've taught athletes and performers for years, well, knowing that and then jumping back into the game, knowing that, that's the essence of being yourself. Jesus said, be in the world, but not of it. That's what he meant. Go back and know yourself, go back in the world, but not as a person, not as an object in the world. Just go have a ball.
You don't lose yourself in the game or in the experience, in the human experience. You don't lose yourself. Then that would go back to know thyself. Perfect. Yeah.
And that's cool. Why we first know ourselves. Who are you? And Mooji would teach this. Ramana Maharshi, Jean Klein,
all of
Francis,
them, sure.
Rupert Spira. These are all terrific non-duality teachers, far better than me. But you know, I'm just a sport guy who kind of saw this, and they think it's cool that I've taken this to performance. Like they don't know how that even would happen. And to me, it's natural because I'm a coach at heart.
Sure,
like that's
right.
Who I am. And that's why my son at a very young age is kind of working his way up the ranks because he can know baseball in and out. And he was a good player. But ultimately, he knows who he is.
He's a coach.
So he's a coach. He could stand as consciousness, stand as that, and then go back into the world and simply serve.
Sure.
And so what we're experiencing now, in my mind, is one of two things. It's the same thing, but it will play out in one of two ways. Let's say it like that. Materialism, the ego, the idea that I am separate, ego, is toast. Now, using time, which is another concept, but we'll leave that for now.
Sure.
You don't know when it's toast. Like I keep telling people about this book, like I wrote this. I didn't think it'd be happening 6 months after I wrote this. Like I thought this is like going to happen 100 years from now. I didn't think, holy shit, that I didn't see coming. Okay, not even a little.
Yeah.
I read this last section of this book. It's crazy. Like I'm saying, like this is going to be ready because here it's going to, but I did not think in my wildest dreams.
It'd be here this quick?
That I have to put the book on hold to deal with it. Like never did I think that was going to happen. So anyway, so we are experiencing the annihilation, the dissolution of the materialistic paradigm.
Which is the ego?
The ego is not...
Or is the ego just an expression of that, is what we're saying?
It's all happening within the sea made of the sea. But yes, the material... Ego is the belief that I am a separate person and I view life from the perspective of a separate person, not from the perspective of the observer or consciousness, as Moonji was saying.
Right.
So, and that is what, if you ask anyone, who are you? They're going to say, oh, I'm Garret, or I'm Brad, or I do podcasts.
I'm a mom, I'm a dad, right. I'm a plumber, I'm a carpenter, whatever it may be. Yeah.
I'm a conserve.
Right. You know? Yeah. Those these days, right? I'm a vaxxer or anti-vaxxer, right? I mean, it's just, label. Sure.
And this is all the workings of the ego to try to divide, to try to separate us. Mm-hmm. So that when someone labels me anti-vaxxer, which is a preposterous label, like
you're just not allowed to ask questions anymore about anything. So
it's simply an ego-based tactic to try to separate me and have me be the enemy. Mm-hmm. And it's preposterous to say because I'm declining a vaccine that I'm anti anything.
Right.
It's not even a consideration because I'm not anti anything. All of it's happening within me. I'm the dreamer. Yeah. Why would I be anti anything?
Right, exactly. Okay? I'm not anti anything. I'm pro things, right? I'm pro thinker. I'm pro brain. I don't know. I'm pro thought.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to be true to myself.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it, that's cool. It's fine. If me being true to myself doesn't add up for you, hey, I still love you. It's cool.
Yeah.
Like I'm not. It's cool.
Be true to yourself. That's cool. Yeah.
I'm true to myself, and I'm not so happy with myself. Like I can mess up too. I'm not like perfect here. I make like 20 mistakes a day. It's fine. So if you think that's wrong, just tell me, and we can talk about it and criticize me till the cows come home. It's fine. But don't blame me though, because if you start to blame me, now we got an issue. Because now we're in separation.
Right.
Criticism actually is vital to our survival. Criticism is vital. Okay, vital, because all criticism is ultimately self-criticism.
Sure.
If you say, hey, gee, I think you kind of lost the plot here on this. If you call me up in a week and say, hey, man, I think you kind of lost the plot on this. Like, all right,
sure.
Tell me more. Like,
what's up? Yeah.
And that's, you're just a modulation within the sea, made of me. So beautiful. All criticism is ultimately self-criticism. Where it could start to get murky, though, is when the whirlpools start to blame the sea. Like, it doesn't make sense. That's the veil.
So right there, and this is where I think when I say self-responsibility, it's to not blame anyone else. And maybe that's the wrong term, wrong word, but I take responsibility for my existence, and I always have, like 100%.
But I don't
ownership, maybe.
But I think my sense of you is like what you're really saying is all of this is happening within me, made of me. So who else? Where else?
There's no blame to give, right? Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like
But check this out. Self-blame is part of the lie. So that's where it gets off. So
is that dogma? So is that dogma though? Is self-blame dogma? So okay, all right, cool.
Because self-blame is saying Garret just screwed up. Well, Garret has never done anything. So Garret's just the idea,
right?
Actor in the dream. So he's just or you could say,
sure.
He's an actor in the movie.
Right.
Like, Michael Corleone looks like he's killing all these people in The Godfather, but that's just the role.
Right.
That's just the script he's following. Anything.
Yep.
So we can't blame Michael Corleone. That would be preposterous. We can't blame anyone. It's all happening within the movie.
Right.
Can't change the script of the movie. The movie's just playing out as it will. So self-blame is a byproduct of materialism, of overlooking what's really going on here. Just like me blaming you, Brad, for something would be the same thing. And we could get caught up in it. But again, when we get caught up in it, this sensation of insecurity, that's just a blanket word for kind of off, we're being off, would arise always when we start to separate, divide and separate, we start to get insecure. Now, unfortunately, we take the insecurity to be, it's arising. That off feeling is arising because of what Donald Trump is doing.
Right.
What Kramer is doing.
Right.
Or what Anthony Fauci is doing or something, right? When in fact, the insecurity is reminding you, no, that's not what's happening. You've overlooked that Anthony Fauci is a modulation within you, made of you. Now, you don't have to agree with what this, like the sea doesn't really like whirlpools, let's just say.
Right.
But it still knows that ultimately the whirlpool is made of itself. So just don't resist it. Don't kick back against it. Let it do its thing, and it will then return to its placid state. The problem is we resist, and we're even taught, even those who know something's going on here, got to resist. We got to resist. No. Biggest mistake we can make is to resist. Call it out. Stand as consciousness, stand as truth, but don't resist. If we resist, it will persist. And we know that. We know that if we get insecure, get anxious, and we try to fight it, it builds. We know this. We all have experienced this. We know that when in sport, if a player's in a slump and they try to fight the slump,
it just more. Yeah.
We just know it. We know it. Yet we're taught to fix the insecurity rather than see it for what it is. And because we are programmed to fix the insecurity, we step on the gas pedal with our tires in mud until we can't anymore, until we're exhausted, and then we let it be. And what happens?
Then it resolves itself.
Oh, why did I just do that? 6 months ago? I wouldn't have been in this marital issue. I love her, and all this stuff's happening, and we recognize that, hey, we just overlooked the nature of ourselves. Going back to the Superman Clark Kent analogy, it's like Superman doesn't need to chase Lois Lane.
Yeah.
But when he dresses in a suit and puts a hat on and whatever, all of a sudden he forgets that he's Superman and he starts chasing Lois Lane. Like, what are you doing, dude? You're Superman.
Yeah.
You forgot who you are. Oh, right. And all of a sudden Lois is then attracted to all things will always dissolve back into source, back into consciousness. It's
have you ever, that just really reminds me, have you ever heard of Don Miguel Ruiz? Do you know who he is? He wrote a book called, not The Voice of Knowledge. It's the Love, it's something, oh gosh, I'm killing it.
Sure.
No, the Four Agreements is amazing. But it's something about love. But basically he makes the analogy that you are love and you're always trying to chase love, but you are that love. Right, we're always seeking love. Again, everything is an inside outward movement. Right, it's not outside in, and that's I think a major misunderstanding there too. Is that again, everything that we ever need is inside. Just to your very point when we started, right, was that actually that sound that's coming from over there is coming from in me. It's not actually outside of me. It's there, right? So it's beautiful.
I'll tell you funny. I was once. I once took umbrage with somebody, and someone said something, and I was doing a day-long meeting. I think it was in London, and someone took umbrage. Someone says something, and I may have spoken like in a louder voice than I was using. So I got kind of stern with this guy, which you do sometimes. It's fine. And he goes, your tone shows me that you're full of crap or something.
Oh, sure.
Tone. So he's telling me this. Like,
right. The way he interpreted a tone is now placed back on you somehow.
Yeah. So I said, wait, let me ask you a question. I said, where does this tone you're speaking of take place? And he's like, he knows it's kind of a trick question. It's like, and then someone from the audience goes, hey, it takes place within you, dude. The guy's like, oh, right. So he's bitching about my tone when in fact that tone can only arise and dissolve within himself.
Right. And the tone is just a tone. Again, it's just a tone. How he reacted to the tone was his programming, his bias.
Yeah, but ultimately that bias springs from his presumption, his conditioned belief that tone is coming from an object at a distance from him, when in fact, not only is that tone arising within him, so is the appearance of Garret on a stage appearing within him, so is the whole room appearing within him, so is the whole world appearing within him. It cannot appear anywhere else. How would that even be possible? So think about it. All of what I'm seeing right now, including the computer, including this phone over here, these books and the window behind and all this is taking place not outside of me. These objects are not taking place at a distance from me. They're taking place, as we would describe it, within me. And this is what the world is totally overlooking. There's two possible perspectives from which we see the world or we experience. One is the perspective that 99.99% of people would say is true. And that is, you see the world from the perspective of a separate human being. the trouble with this is just like contagion has never been proven, it's actually for the same reason, that commonly accepted perspective has never been proven. It has never been proven that you see the world from the perspective of a separate person. And as crazy as that sounds, and will sound to people, luckily we didn't go right at the top of this podcast because everyone would have jumped off. Right? So they kind of say, oh, this is a cool conversation. Now we can go with it a little bit. So it is no one, not any physicist or neurologist, scientist, doctor of any sort can prove that we see the world from the perspective of a separate person. It literally cannot be proven that that is true. Just like it can't be proven that a human being is conscious. That's another thing that cannot be proven. Remember I said before about levels of consciousness? Well, if human beings are conscious, then it would make sense that there would be levels. But since it can't be proven that human beings are the knower, the one who experiences, are conscious, it can't be proven. And frankly, in neurology, this dilemma has come to be known as the hard problem of consciousness. They actually have a name for it because they keep trying to figure out how the heck are people conscious when in fact they're not. They are consciousness. We are consciousness itself.
Right, yeah.
We fund it. So the other option is we are seeing the world from the perspective of the whole. So the universe, we could say, I am the universe, and all of this is happening within me, made of me, known by me. And it's not me, Garret, or you, Brad. It's, you may even say us. It's inside of us. Now, inside is not a perfect term because it's all made of the sea. So there's no real inside of anything inside of the sea.
Sure.
It's like,
yeah.
But we use the term it's happening within me. And sages have said, look within for the answers you seek for as long as there's been sages. Because we are so conditioned to think that the world happens outside of us. We're kind of counteracting that conditioning and saying, whoa, wait a second. Is this really happening outside of you? How would that be possible? Rather, could it be happening inside of you or within you? And I clearly don't mean within a body. Unfortunately, when I was younger and I heard Ramana Maharshi or John Klein saying, look within, I thought they meant within a body first, because I had been so programmed to be a body. And it didn't make sense to me. Like, how could answers be in a body? How could the world, the universe, be in a body? Like, that's not
right.
It's just kind of, so I kind of went with it because it sounded cool, but it was never really adding up for me until I realized, holy shit, I am not a body. I am the universe. I am consciousness.
I am that.
I am that. I am, period. I am. And when we start to wake up to this essential fact, quite frankly, Brad, the only thing we know to be true is that there's no separation. So we then say, well, if there's no separation, this has to be happening within me then. Yep. You have to share my being. We share a being. And I think this conversation and our work in our own way is simply reminding the world of that. Like, because that's what we've forgotten, including viruses, man. Like, come on. Why can't they isolate a virus? Because you can't isolate anything.
Right. It's like isolating consciousness, right? It's that same level. Yeah.
I can't even isolate this jar of water if you really want to get down to it. If you really want to look at it, I can't even isolate this. Like, even in a very scientific sense, you have this water, you have this hand, and you have the air between them, right? And it's all molecules.
Right. Yep.
So,
all moving. Nothing solid.
Nothing solid. It's all consciousness.
That was one of the first things we learned in school. Remember? I mean, under a microscope, like metal. Why does metal heat up faster? Because the atoms are closer together and they vibrate faster, right? And we know this. Just, I mean, that was the basic things. But somewhere it was like weird. We forgot, and it's like, and it's not like we just forgot and it was that. There are forces that be that are banking on that are continuing that. Again, it's the monetization of the original sin. You know what I mean? That's kind of what's, and right now it's just pretty gnarly. So real quick, I have a question for you. This is amazing stuff. So in your opinion, what would one do to take that first step to knowing thyself or knowing the self? So just to kind of eradicate that belief, or the original sin.
There's several ways. There's several ways that journey can be initiated, but ultimately they're all the same. It's just different descriptions. So, first of all, if you're not interested in it, then my words won't mean anything. I don't mean you. I mean anyone who's listening or watching this, whatever. Like, there's nothing. It's like telling someone to, before they take a vaccine, before you do that, explore it, look into it. We could say it, and it's not illogical to say it, but ultimately,
you wouldn't think so.
we can't change anyone's mind. So, however.
So step one's the desire.
Any desire you ever had in your so-called life, or I've ever had in my so-called life, any desire is the desire to know thyself, masquerading as something else.
I love, yeah.
And in fact, your only desire is to be desireless. And your only desire is to not have desire.
Real. Yeah.
No, because when we stop seeking.
Yeah. And then everything comes. Yeah.
And you're at peace. So it's like the goal scorer we said before, when he or she stops seeking, the puck or the ball finds your stick and it's in the net. Like, what just happened? I was running around like a nut. All of a sudden, I just held still for a second and I scored 3 goals like it was nothing.
Yeah, because you were so far in your head and your ego, right? That, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wayne Gretzky tried to be a coach and teach players this, but he didn't quite understand what it was he was doing himself. And that was the issue. So, which is funny because he didn't quite know, and he even went away from himself. My daughter was a college field hockey player, and boy, did we have so many discussions about this. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
And if there was ever a player who just hung out around the net and just was filing her nails and scored 1 million goals, it was Chelsea Kramer. And of course, every coach tried to get her to work harder, right. And she would laugh and keep scoring, breaking all these scoring records. And one time, funny story, one time, I think it was after a sophomore season in college, at like the season ending get together, the coach actually kind of knew what I did in sport. He came to me and goes, "How are we going to get Chelsea to be grittier?" So I turned to her and I said, "Let me ask you a question, Carly. In all due respect, like, how many goals do you want her to score? Like, how many more goals?"
More?
Like, just broke the single season scoring record at this college. Like, exactly.
What are you looking for here?
Who is she supposed to score? Like, and she didn't know what to say. Like, and I can promise you, it was, as a hockey player, ice hockey player, my mistake was being the same natural scorer as my daughter, but buying into that mentality and trying to be something I wasn't, and starting to hit people and go into the corners and get my ass kicked when I was really a speed guy with good hands.
Right.
And it resulted in knee surgeries and facial all kinds of stuff. And I was a decent player in college and stuff, but nowhere near like I should have been or like my daughter. So very like as someone, you know, I love my daughter more than anything, but I was going to do everything in my power for her not to happen to her,
right,
as a player and as a person, because I knew what it did to me.
Right.
And my sons are both college baseball players, so it was a little different in that sport. But in scoring, this was very evident. It was something that my daughter and I actually had so much fun with throughout her whole career on the field.
That's really cool that you were able to be conscious and aware and pass this kind of along. You know what I mean? And that's beautiful, man. That's a great story.
Well, yeah. Like, look, she's my wife is barely 5'2". I'm 6 feet. Chelsea's like 5'5", but she's a petite kid. I mean, she's not this bruiser who's going to go start whacking.
Right.
Like she's a speed demon that runs like a gazelle, and she's a good scorer. And she's, look, if her nature was to be that gritty, however you want to describe it.
Sure.
Funniest thing is she played that season with a broken thumb that needed surgery after the season was over. So I don't even know what. But be that as it may, it's all fine. But if that was who she was, then that would have been fine. But I don't want anybody. My message to any person is, hey, be true to you. Be true, because when it's all said and done, that's all you got. You know, no one is lying on their so-called deathbed saying, "Oh, I want more money, or I want more fame, or I want more sex, or I want more."
Right.
Whatever. You're gonna say, "Was I true? Was I true? Was I true to myself?" And ultimately, those who are most true to themselves will face the most backlash, as Chelsea was doing from her very own coach, which is hilarious in essence. So, but back to your question about like how do we what's the first step to knowing ourselves? Well, first, as you said, is the pure interest in it. Like that's it, and that interest being front and center. And then I usually go right at it. Like I ask people, who are you? Who are you? And then you will get answers invariably. Everyone knows there's something about that question that means I'm not Garret or I'm not Brad. Like you wouldn't
there's
be
something
asking
deeper there, right?
So, and it's someone like me who's teaching, whether it's an audience or just one person. So they're going to kind of know it's something about that question.
Right, sure. Trick question. Yeah.
It's not what it seems.
Right.
But they will still generally, just as I did, revert back to conditioning. And then, so it's my role to question that conditioning. So we look at these beliefs one by one if necessary, but ultimately they start to drop together.
Indeed.
One by one if necessary. Are you truly an American? Truly? Or someone tell you you're an American? Oh, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with being an American. I dig being an American.
Yeah. No, we're talking about labels. We're talking about, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Or did someone tell you were that? Oh, wow, that's interesting. Right. So in other words, if you're from Nigeria and I'm from America, those are both beliefs that we were taught. Oh, right. Okay. Are you truly a man? Like, or is that just another label? Oh.
Is that the first label, right? That's usually the identification that most people have first, right? Man or woman.
Am I fast, slow, handsome, tall, short? All of these.
Sure.
Black, white. I mean, just all insane. Like, thinking about that for a second. Like, think about it. We're actually trying to counteract discrimination by promoting
discrimination,
diversity. Like diversity is the ultimate.
Some smart stuff there, buddy.
It's the ultimate.
It's just so smart. We don't realize how smart that is. You know, there's something there, Garret. I tell you, man.
Diversity is untrue. What you're looking at when you see a group of people, or things, whatever, animals, whatever, as consciousness. You're looking at love itself. You're not seeing all these whirlpools in the sea, as we said, are the sea. There's no such thing as diversity, but the ego's got us so wrapped around its finger, so to speak, that we're using the lie to try to fix the lie. I mean, come on.
That's real. That's real.
We're using a vaccine to try to get healthy. It's just all
poison. But look at chemotherapy. Chemotherapy. How ridiculous of a concept is that?
It killed my father. I mean, it's just devastating.
Same, man. Yep. I hear you. Yeah.
Devastating. I watched this go down, and I didn't, I'm trying, it's fine. Like,
right. It's all in the play, and it's all the thing we're talking about. It's got to play itself out. It is what it is.
We can still call it out what it is. So what we do is we look at these beliefs, and we really look at them hard. And we could get even to a belief like this. Get ready for this one. Like, hey, Garret, do you love your wife? Oh, wait. Do you really? Are you capable of loving an object? And you look at it, and you really look at it. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with loving your wife. Like, I tell my wife and my children, I tell everyone.
I love this stuff.
When I hang up the phone, I'm like, who was I just speaking to? Oh, Alex Zek. I was just speaking to Alex Zek.
Oh, yeah. I talked to Tommy John last night, man. Yeah.
These are great. These are beautiful modulations of consciousness.
Yes,
right
indeed.
Here, right?
I love them.
So,
yeah.
7:00 his time this morning, 9:00 mine, because he's in Colorado. And we hung up the phone. Love you, buddy. Love you, G. That's how we hung up the phone.
Yes.
We hang up the phone every time. Okay. However, can I really love an object? Is that possible? The answer to that is no, because the object is a modulation within myself. We are love.
Mm-hmm.
You and I are love.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's nothing wrong with saying I love you. Certainly, it's wonderful to say it. I hope my son tells his players that on his team. I know he does, because that's who he is. And it's all beautiful. But we look at these things, and we really take a look. We get all the way down to this one. Were you born? Not will you die, because that's an easy one. We don't know anything about that.
Right.
Everyone knows that death is something that, like, we're so afraid of, but we don't even know anything about this thing called death. But the question, which is hilarious in itself.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But that question becomes even more nonsensical when you look at this. The question is, were you born? And everybody says, well, yeah, I mean, I'm here. Oh, no. Did you have the experience of being born? I don't know. So then it's a belief that you were born.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's a belief. Well, but I've seen my kids being born. No, I didn't ask you about your kids. I'm saying, can you recall the experience, or do you have the experience of being born yourself? No, I don't. And what we know about consciousness is it doesn't appear or disappear. The true self, consciousness, as Munji says, doesn't go anywhere.
Just is, yeah.
Just is. And if you really look at it, you've never had the experience of being born or appearing. And you've never had the experience of disappearing or dying. It literally is a belief that we are born and we will die. And imagine right now the world is caught up in running from something that can't even happen. That's how crazy this is.
That's like, the virus, right? Again, it's the belief in the invisible boogeyman, which again might be redundant.
The ego has got us in its grip, so to speak. All of us to a certain extent, because if I really look at that, I'm going to say, well, that sounds all good, and I know it's true. But if I'm honest, which I will be, I lose touch with that more than I'm in touch with it. However, I know what happens when I'm in touch with it, and I know that I return back home, and I know that that's true, and I will always go, even though I'm not experiencing that in the moment. I still know who I am. So it's like, I can see all this separation, all these separate things, right? But that doesn't make them true, because the belief that they're actual separate things is gone, toast. However, I still see the separation, and I'm not going to deny that.
Right. You're still aware of it. Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I still, so the belief in these things goes, but the programmed illusions remain. And that's okay, because they allow us to have this conversation, and it's fine. It's Absolutely. Cool. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. And I can pretend that I can jump in the game and have a ball. My son's team had a double header yesterday. My wife and I watched the second game, and they lost this game, and I was pissed. I was pissed that they lost the game. They're having a good season. Yeah. Like they beat this team 3 out of 4. But so Ryan called me and goes, some of my guys think it's okay. We won 3 out of 4. I'm like, do you? He goes, fuck no. I'm like, not a boy. But at the same time, there's the knowing that this is still happening.
It's a game. It's a game, right? You can't take it too serious, right? Yeah. If you take life too serious, you'll never get out alive, right?
Liz says to him, because she doesn't chime in much on the sports stuff, but she says to him, because he's on the speaker, right, it's one game. What she's really saying is, you're Superman. Get your act together. You're all right. This is you're fine.
Yeah.
That's, like, she's saying it like in very practical terms, which is perfect. And she's a terrific teacher in that way, without even knowing what she's saying. It's just one game, which sounds so basic, right. But what she's really saying is, hey, get some perspective here. Remember who you are.
Right. Yep.
You're okay.
Yep.
And of course, this morning, very interestingly, Rye called me. And he was driving onto campus to practice, and or whatever, his office. And he says, we'll be all right. Like, my pitching is really coming together. I'm really starting to see it now. Yep. I'm like, okay, now we got this. Because even in that loss, I kind of saw it too, which you really got a sense of how these playoffs and how the end of the season is going to play out. Like, you see where his pitching staff is starting to really solidify who belongs out there in crunch time. And I thought that was kind of cool, even though it came at a loss, which in the moment, like I said, sucked. I mean, I was like, oh my God, how are they losing this game?
Right.
I told my son once, all 3 of my kids, I said, you guys, it wasn't easy being a parent watching you guys play, but Ryan choosing this career, this is rough, man. Like, this is no picnic, because this is his career, these games. Like, so you can really lose.
Right.
Before, I lose track of what's happening all the time, until my insecurity will build up to an extent that I have no choice but to say, hey, get a grip here. But as Liz said, it's only one game. Get a grip here. Or what she's really saying, though, as I said, is, who are you?
Right.
Who are we?
Right.
Let's get together here.
Yes.
And, so what we're doing here, we're asking the fundamental question: who are you? Who am I? Who are we? In any way you want. Another way to say that, Brad, would be, on whose behalf is this experience taking place? Very good to remind yourself that it's not taking place from the perspective of a limited and lacking separate person. How would that even happen? So that's another way. Another last one I'll give you is, very often when we lose track of who we are, we get stuck in a decision. What should I do? So being stuck in a decision is always a symptom of, I've overlooked who I am. But that's okay, because that's what happens.
Part of the game.
Part of the game. So when we're stuck in that decision, the concession that I recommend, and what I mean by concession is just a kind of a strategy, dropping off the perch of purity, just to spin us back home. A concession would always spin us back home, whereas a technique, I'm just using words, would always send us further out into the lie.
Gotcha.
So like positive thinking would be a technique.
Sure. So instead of removing layers, you're kind of adding more on.
Adding layers, exactly. And you're if I'm going to think positive, then I'm in control of my thinking, which is just ridiculous.
Sure.
And everyone knows, they like look at it, thoughts arise, they just come.
Yep.
There's nothing you're going to do to stop it.
Right.
You pretend to stop it, but No, not going to happen.
Becoming an observer is much more effective.
Exactly. You could, and that's because it's true.
Yeah.
That's because you are the observer. Like,
that is the truth,
you're not
right?
in control of these things. And if you think you are, I could just prove all that in a second, but we won't do that here. So if we're stuck in stuck in a decision, what should I do? Knowing that we've overlooked the essence, infinite and eternal essence of our own being, simply make the choice that best reflects who you are. That's it. And you are love, you are peace, you are consciousness, you are God's infinite being. Make the choice that best reflects that. So here I am, here's the choices. Once I make the choice that best reflects who I truly am, peace, love, freedom, and once that choice is made, you make it, you sit there and say, oh my God, I never had this choice to begin with. This is always who I am. So you're home. And that is an incredibly effective concession, especially right now. I can't tell you how many times over the past year I've reminded myself of that, and I've reminded my friends of that, and people who have called me. Like, I cannot tell you, because, man, is this situation rife for confusion? And so who am I? Make the choice that best reflects that which I truly am. You will literally never go wrong. It's impossible.
Wow. Garret, man. Wow. What a great talk. So really quick, one last question I have for you is, could you please let everyone who's listening know how to get a hold of you, and how can people find you and get more of this information?
I just got one of these things on Instagram that I may be disabled, so that may not be the right place. Craziness.
Where are we at? How is it that someone like you can't? It's such a weird place, man.
Read the post that they were telling me that they were taking. They took 3 posts down today, and I couldn't even see which post. But then I think I got a clue. And what's so funny about that, just as an aside, is like, if I was going to take down some of my posts, those are the wrong ones. Like, they're just not even being smart about it.
Right.
They don't
understand what you're saying. That's the thing, is that you've got these fact checkers who are so far away from any of the godliness that you're speaking.
They're the wrong posts. Like, if they're really trying to beat me, they're the worst. They stink. That's a team that's. Again. But I would remind people that, like, these guys, they're clueless. Like, I feel bad because, dude, like, you're taking down the wrong post. You really want to get me. You're taking the wrong ones, but it's fine. Like, okay. So I just clicked okay, but I'm not going to, whatever. It's fine. So anyway, but Instagram, like, this Instagram thing is hilarious, because up until a year ago or 8 months ago, I had, like, Instagram wasn't really a thing for me. I didn't even use it.
Right.
I just love that community. Like, to be honest, like, I've had a long career, and before this happened, this book was going to, I closed Inner Sports. I still have some clients that I work with, but my career was pretty much about just flying around the world, giving my one-day meetings, which I love, and talks, and we're going to write this book, and then kind of just do just talk to help people, whatever. And in all honesty, like, meeting people like Tommy and Alec and Allie, his mother, and gosh, on and on and on. I tell you, like, this has been special to me. Because I've always really had an interest in health and well-being and taking care of myself and my family, and my wife's this way too. But I never quite brought it together with the consciousness only model that I teach, and that is very near and dear to me. And this has been an opportunity for me to do that. And it's really been special. And I'll tell you, like, the people that I've met, and I've heard this from other people too, you probably have as well, and you probably would say the same thing. Like, the people I've met in the last year, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
No. That's what 2020's done, right? I mean, 100%. It's brought us all together. Like, because I've just always been kind of I guess if you're a free thinker, you're an outcast. That just seems to be the way that it is, right? I mean, just your whole life, right? Because you'll question things, and usually that's not popular. Questioning things is not popular. People just want you to kind of go along with whatever's going on, right? So, yeah, being here now and being able to connect with, again, like you, Tommy John, all these people, it's just again, we're finding my tribe, if you will.
What you see, man, and those people is like, here we are, like, it's so funny. Tommy, like, talk about Tommy. I worked with his father. When he retired from the Yankees, Tommy got into the kind of consulting field, and he came to me. We played golf a bunch of times together. And then when I met Tommy Jr., I thought they had the same name. I didn't even know that was his son, that they were father's son.
Oh, really?
And one day, Tommy puts a post down. He mentions his father. I call Alec. I said, wait, are you telling me that's Tommy John's son? He's his son? He goes, yeah. Like, what the fuck? Tommy Sr. was in his office 2 years ago, hanging out, talking sport and kind of coaching and the mentor and all this stuff. And I'm on the golf course with him.
Yeah.
And what? Like, it was just so cool. I told Tommy, he's like, boom, man, boom. Like, holy, it was so funny.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, what you'll find in the people that you mentioned in the wider community is everyone is just so freely themselves, and everyone's so wonderfully different modulations of the same thing. Like, it's so cool if you really look at it. And I think that's just been fantastic. It's like my dream of coming back to the true self is just playing out before our eyes. And I think if we can just hang in there, sure, stand as love, stand as courage, freedom. I'm not saying don't speak out against the lie, because you absolutely, I would never not. I'm not capable of not. But in the back of our minds, if we can just see that this veil is being chipped away, it's receding, it's going, and we just keep at it. I think that, as I said, either materialism going to go, as we said, it's a lie, it cannot stand.
Sure.
The question then becomes, does the world go with it, or do we live in harmony? And either way, we're going to be okay. I want to just remind everyone of that.
Sure.
I promise we're going to be okay.
All is well.
All is well, either way. But perhaps over the last year, I'm starting to see a glimmer just in people like you, like meeting, and they're all younger than me, which I love so much. Like, I like that is the young generation, younger than you and even younger than you, like way from me. Like, I was talking to my friend Ali, who lives in London in the UK, and her son Ali was in the car when I was talking to her on my way to the office today. And I'm like, Ali, and I told Ali, like, I know Ali a little bit. He just turned 12. I'm like, he's it. Ali is it. We're doing this for Ali. Ali is going to change the world.
Yeah.
Ali is going to change the world, and
absolutely,
that's why it's so important that we stand as and for freedom and truth, and we hang in there. To set that example for our youth is essential right now, absolutely essential, because they are bombarded with the opposite, and we've got to set that example and they'll recognize it. They'll recognize it clearly. Ali will recognize it.
Yeah.
The youth, the young will recognize it, and that will allow them to stand as themselves. So we've got to just hang in there a little longer, and this thing's going to flip.
Oh man, amazing. All right. Thank you so much. So what's your Instagram though? What's your Instagram? Even if you do get booted off.
My website is just myname.com.
GarretKramer.com.
Yeah. So you can just get in touch. The website, like my YouTube was shut down, so that's not on there anymore. Okay. I haven't written art, but so the website's pretty rudimentary now because a lot of it's been come off of there. And I don't plug my books on my website, so you won't see any of that. However, there is a contact form on the site, and then once someone contacts me, then it's a standard email or text exchange or call or whatever. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much again, Garret. That was very inspiring, full of love and information. And I hope we can do this again. I would love to talk to you more. There's so much more. And again, this will always be a talk of exploration of consciousness and all this good stuff. But freedom is definitely the hill that I'm here to die on. Because without this foundation of freedom, to me, there's nothing else, right? I just had my first daughter as well. So just not really, here we go. So
yes, sir.
Thank you. God bless you, doctor. Or sorry, I don't know why I think you're some doctor. Are you a doctor? That's probably why you're so smart. You're not a doctor. Yeah, because I mean, it's like one of these things. These days, I'm just like, man.
No thanks. I when I was in college playing hockey, I thought I would be maybe one of the things I would do is be a doctor of psychology, and I made it. I think 2 weeks through the first psychology course until I dropped out. This can't be right. Like this isn't.
Well, dude, thank God you did. Have you heard Tommy John's story? Dr. Tommy John, have you heard his story? Right? And he's like, that book was owned by Pfizer. He was like, okay, that's it. I'm out of here. We're in it. Right. We're in it for sure. All right, Garret. Thanks a lot, buddy. I really appreciate you. Thanks.
All right, buddy.
All right, bye-bye. Bye.